It's where you go to bike, hike, and stroll miles of pathways over more than 7,000 acres of parkland. A place to go explore rivers and fish their bountiful waters. Natural places to go marvel at magnificent wildlife while you play outdoors and go wander charming communities. Find all this and more at Destination Downriver. Give it a go.
Today's podcast is presented by MarketInsights.us, with the podcast on YouTube produced by the City of Taylor's Media Center. Thank you for the generous support of our community sponsor. When your destination is beyond Downriver, let Martinson Family of Funeral Homes help you and your family. With locations in Trenton, Allen Park, Mabee, Rockwood, and Monroe, their staff is available 24/7 at 734-671-5400. For more information, visit martinson.com.
Thank you to our team sponsor, Allegra, Marketing, Print, and Design. Let Allegra assist you with your print, mail, design, and signs. Located in Wyandotte, Michigan, or call 734-284-5330.
Welcome to Destination Downriver. I'm your host, Karl Ziomek. Last August, the Downriver Community Conference was awarded a $1.6 million grant from the Economic Development Administration for the Downriver Riverfront Community's Economic Recovery Implementation Project. The purpose of this grant is to help strengthen economic development in the region following the closure of 2 DTE coal-fired power plants along the riverfront, especially in the 5 communities located between the 2 plants: River Rouge, Ecorse, Wyandotte, Riverview, and Trenton, combined with the Jefferson Street corridor. The EDA award helped Destination Downriver get the attention of our local NBC affiliate, WDIV, who ran a report underscoring the importance of this issue. This project offers technical assistance and matching grant funds for small businesses that were negatively impacted by the closure of the 2 power plants or the coronavirus epidemic. This program is being operated by the University of Michigan's Economic Growth Institute in partnership with the DCC Economic Development Department. The DCC has developed a strategy for brownfield sites along the Detroit Riverfront corridor stretching between the 2 plants. This strategy will reduce uncertainty in these sites and heighten redevelopment possibilities. Okay, back with us today on Destination Downriver, our panelists, Jazmine Danci, Economic Development Administrator for the Downriver Community Conference, I got that right, and John Diadona, the Brownfield Program Manager, who obviously, when we're talking about what we're talking about here, has his work cut out for him, correct?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, exactly. Jazmine, before you went to the DCC, you were in Romulus, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Tell us about your background.
Sure. So I've been with the DCC just less than a year now. Mm-hmm. I started last December. Mm-hmm. But prior to that, I did a little bit of time with the Greater Romulus Chamber of Commerce there as Executive Director. And then prior to that, I was with the City of Romulus for 7 years, doing community and economic development and communications. Mm-hmm. But I also have my bachelor's and master's degrees in environmental sustainability.
Oh, really? From where?
My bachelor's from Bowling Green State and master's from U of M Ann Arbor.
Oh, okay, very good. My wife
Go
has her MDA from Bowling Green.
Oh, yeah. Go Falcons.
So
nice.
Yeah, there we go.
Yes.
John, what about your background? Tell us a little
well,
bit
I've been a consultant for about 45 years. I've been in the Brownfield Program Manager now for 3 years. Was originally a consultant to DCC from about 2007 up till when I started as a Brownfield Program Manager. Graduated from the University of Michigan with 2 engineering degrees, and been in the Brownfield program since its inception in the mid-1990s.
Oh, fantastic. Well, let's just jump in at the deep end, and you guys can just answer as I throw these questions out. Let's start with the main goals that have been laid out for this major initiative along the riverfront between those 2 DTE plants that are going down. Talked about create and staff a regional economic development office. I'm going to have you address that, Jazmine. The DCC's always been that gigantic government support group downriver. How does that fit into your job here and staffing it and creating this department?
Sure, just a little bit of background. As you mentioned, Carl, the DCC has actually been around since the late 1960s. It is the oldest interlocal agreement in the state of Michigan, actually, and it started through Downriver Mutual Aid. And then another 10 or so years later, it evolved into the Downriver Community Conference. And actually had economic development as one of its primary goals in the early days. And then just over the years, funding changes and things, the true economic development role and department really morphed into concentrating more in John's program, the Brownfield. So we didn't have an economic development department at the DCC, very recently at all. So we were able to qualify for this grant through the Economic Development Administration because of those two coal-fired power plant closures. It qualified for a close to $2 million grant, which we received last year. So that allowed us to then create this regional economic development office. And we're really just trying to serve as like an intermediary on behalf of our communities. Again, it's focused on the 5 riverfront communities of River Rouge, Ecorse, Wyandotte, Riverview, and Trenton. So that 5 community stretch. But most of the communities that we work with don't have a dedicated economic development director on staff. So we're trying to help fill that role, and for those that do, the couple that do, we're still supporting them and advocating for them on a regional level.
John, the developing a strategy for brownfield development sites like this can be very, very challenging. Can you address that?
Yeah, it can be challenging. I think we've had a very successful brownfield program since 1997, and so we developed a process where developers and communities could bring sites to us, but it's been limited. We're kind of in a reactive mode where we have to wait for the projects to come to us. So one of the thoughts we had with this EDA grant was to make this more of a proactive process and look at holistically a little bit more in communities rather than one site at a time, like a gas station site or a coffee shop or something like that. Those are all important, but we looked at this as an opportunity to do some real deep dive planning to how we can catalyze some of these areas and these larger sites, perhaps to get them more site ready for developers, because they're so they're intimidating to developers. There's risks involved, there's time involved, and those are things that developers don't like. Uncertainty. So we're trying to get through some of those narrow issues in terms of those risks and timelines to make developers want to look at these properties on a regular basis. So it is a little more challenging. The sites are larger. There's more people involved in terms of it's a community-driven process. So it's a challenging opportunity, but a very worthy opportunity.
Is it more intimidating to the possible developer looking at the site, or to the city that may not have the resources to really do what it needs to
I
be
think
done?
it's intimidating to the cities and communities, but it's also we're trying to get other agencies within the state and federal government to look at these areas, which they haven't in the past. I mean, these brownfield sites are way down the list for redevelopment, and so how do we bring these up so that they at least get a sniff from somebody and close that gap, the time gap, the uncertainty gap, the risk gap, so that these can be available.
So you're playing connect the dot here?
Yeah, trying to, yeah. And I mean, to John's point, if you look at the landscape of Downriver, we are rich in brownfields, so it really, we're trying to really, make the case to take advantage of this and, make the case for the developers, but also, like John said, the other, state and other entities that are, incentivizing these developments to look in this area and not necessarily, they don't compare to the open green fields, old farmlands and things. It's totally different. But I think where we do have the advantage is that we have infrastructure in place. We have a rich workforce locally, so it's not like plopping something out in the middle of nowhere. We have these other support systems here that can be worthy of development. We just need a little bit of help.
Tell us about the Small Business Technical Assistance Program, because that kind of rings like that's something that's needed.
Definitely. So yeah, that's the third component to this grant that we're working on is the creation of a small business technical assistance program. And for the first phase of that program, we've been partnering with the University of Michigan Economic Growth Institute. So they've been the primary leader on that. We've assisted them with doing community outreach along the riverfront, knocking doors, actually going and speaking with business owners, doing assessments, detailed assessments actually, to review their financials and operations and see how, what is going to be of most benefit to their businesses. And so what we've done with EGI's help is we've found 15 local businesses along, throughout the 5 community corridor. And they've gone through that assessment, and they've actually identified projects that they want to move forward with matching grant funds. So each of these businesses is going to receive a $10,000 grant. They put in a small amount of match, and then the university helps them go and solicit a very qualified consultant to help them with that project that's been vetted and gone through all the checks and balances. So it can't go towards like actual equipment purchases, but a lot of people are taking advantage of like creating a new website or learning how to do e-commerce or other marketing or financial services, that kind of stuff. So that's in the process right now. We've found all 15 qualifying business owners and found a lot of others in the process that maybe are just at different stages for their needs. But the 15 that are in the program for the grant are all now going and soliciting their consultants, and the projects will all be complete at the end of January.
Okay.
And through this process, there's been privacy and non-disclosures, so we're not sharing a lot of the details. But once all the projects are complete, we're really looking forward to maybe coming back here or doing some other press on the outcomes and what these businesses have actually shown to be of benefit and improve their businesses through this opportunity.
When you look at your overall performance thus far as a economic development driver, okay, can you put a percentage? How's your progress? How are you progressing along? Is it hard to put hey, we're at 10% of the 100% we want to get to, or we're at 20%, or are you even thinking in those terms?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's one that we've been really talking a lot about in the office, actually, is what metrics are we going to be using to track our progress, really, because like I said, we're coming up on just about a year of this grant so far. And the difficult thing with metrics that we're finding is that economic development takes a long time. It's not like we're going to be bringing in businesses, one after the other immediately. It takes time to build the structures and the assistance and bring in the partners to really, get a whole, to be able to see the results, to the average person. But the important thing is that we are here and that we are, getting people around the table. So that's the most important thing that I've seen in this role, is the ability to look regionally, that you are not just, when you're in local government, and like my background, you're really just working on the nitty gritty. You've got your blinders on, trying to make the best of your budget for the taxpayers. And it's hard to find partners that way, or look to your neighbors and be strategic. But at our level, we're just one step above, where we're trying to make a whole corridor an impact. And I think that we've been able to get big groups of people, many stakeholders and partners, all around the same table, talking about issues that have been going on for generations. So to me, that's where we're starting to make progress, is the partnerships that we're bringing in, the new resources that we're bringing to Downriver, its residents and small business owners.
John, when you look at these brownfield sites in those areas, brownfield sites often, there's a range
Yeah.
You look at this site and you can do almost anything with it. You look at that site and you can do this with it, period. Okay.
Right.
I mean, it reminds me of something like the Wyandotte Golf Course, okay,
Right.
where they really couldn't do much besides cap it. It turned out to be a wonderful project.
Yeah.
Sure.
But what do you see down there in terms of that? Do you see a lot of huge restrictions?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on the developers, obviously, but these large brownfield sites have multiple opportunities. I think the mistake that a lot of people look at is always have to be a park, because you don't want to do anything and turn up the skeletons in the soil, or it should be all industry because we need the jobs and this tax base. These sites are not homogeneous over the whole area. So parts of these sites are dirty, parts might be very clean. And I think holistically, with the way development is going these days, is that you need a blend. You need to match parts of the site. Maybe it would be industrial, but maybe cleaner industrial than we've had in the past. Part might be residential, part might be recreational. I think you're going to see a blend on these different sites, and I think that makes it more palatable, I think, to the communities who want access to the river, obviously, is a big thing. But at the same time, we do need jobs and tax base, so I think that you're not going to see the old days like you're just going to see one industry on a 200-acre site. It's not going to happen. You're going to have maybe ribbon parks going through an industrial complex or things like that, and I see that as being more feasible than just going in one direction, where the community wants one thing perhaps, and they're really dug in, but maybe that's not feasible to make it all one thing. And the same thing from the industrial perspective, maybe it's not feasible to make it all industry. You need to have quality of life, people moving into the communities that also want these jobs. It's going to be a blend.
I assume that because there's been a great desire to kind of for the public to recapture at least portions of that riverfront, because forever that riverfront was dominated by heavy industry, and it was blocked off. How important is that? I mean, you mentioned pocket parks and stuff like that, but is that a really key portion of this?
Oh, certainly. Again, quality of life is very important to people, and gaining access to the riverfront. It's a great resource. I mean, in the old days, a lot of times industry took up those properties because they needed access to the water. They had shipping coming in, and some of that still might be used for that. But nowadays, those sites have been so encumbered that people, like the power plants, for instance, nobody's walked on those sites except the workers for 50, 75, 100 years. And so how do we get those properties more available to the public? And I think there'll be ongoing discussions about that as we work with owners of those properties, developers who want those properties. And most developers on brownfield sites, the ones that have experience, realize that they can't do what was done in the old days because there's so many processes. They got to go through zoning, planning, and if they're looking for brownfield incentives, they have to get approvals from the local communities. And if they're only going to put in what was there in the past, the public's going to stand up and say, we don't want that anymore. So they're going to get stymied. They may buy a property and then they can't do anything with it. So there's a lot of, it's going to be more of a community-driven process than it's been in the past, where the industry has just come in, bought everything, and done what they wanted.
Jazmine, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say to that point is that this whole grant has been very community oriented. We have a great strategy team on board that's really set our priorities and our whole strategic plan through this process, even prior to receiving the grant. And so I feel really good about the people that are at the table, and their residents, their city administrators, and they're really vested in this process. And that is what's guiding us. That's where we get our marching orders from. Through every step, we make sure to have in-depth community engagement as a piece of that. So it really is important.
Yeah.
Is it difficult to get I'm assuming that the answer to this is no, but is it difficult to get the communities to buy into, because brownfield redevelopment,
Sure.
because they do have to grant, they're not going to take as much tax base from it, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Is that difficult to sell or not?
It can be. It can be, but it's. I think when you bring people together and when you say, like, if somebody wants to park there in the community, if you don't want to park there, you have to say why you don't want to park or why you can't have a park there, not just no, you can't have a park there. So there's going to be a lot of exchange in this community-driven process for people to voice their opinions. And we've got a strategic brownfield team on board that's going to say, we like what you're saying, but it might not be feasible. And here's why, not just you can't do it, but here's why. So there's going to be that balance of professional information that's coming in, but listening from to the community and what they want and desire.
Jazmine, is it too much to ask? You've got your group focusing on essentially 5 communities plus that corridor, but you've got 20 communities in the DCC. That can also often be a dicey type thing. Are you making efforts to say, hey, we're trying to draw this here, but it's also going to benefit you, and you, okay? And maybe if we put that there, you and you could benefit. Is that part of this process?
Yeah, and I think our executive director, Jim Perry, has always known that, even though we're focused on the 5 riverfront communities, it benefits all of Downriver and Metro Detroit even. The riverfront is such an opportunity and a driver for this region that we know that everyone is going to benefit from that. And we are hearing that, from other communities outside of the corridor as well. They know that there's benefit to this. And we have, Mayor Woolley even is on one of our other advisory committees and is always invested in the process because we know that our residents are working throughout Downriver. It's not that you only stay in one city. So it really is a community and regional effort. So I think there's benefit there, but we are also in our department making a real effort in realizing that this grant is a 3-year timeline. We know that there's an end date for that, and our goal is to use this as kind of a test point or a trial period, if you will, and then be able to seek funding in the meantime to then go and expand our services for our Economic Development Office to all 20 in the Downriver area, at the completion of this grant. That's our goal.
It would seem like that would be a logical move because there, to then layer the economic development process, where the DCC and your group would be looking at a wider range on a upper level, and then then it goes down to even communities that don't have economic development offices or a specialist or anything like that.
Exactly.
It would seem like you could tie that together that way better.
And we're kind of looking for the Brownfield program. This is kind of a program that we want to replicate throughout all of DCC. I mean, we're focused on 5 communities right now, but we're already starting to look at the Ecorse Creek drainage corridor as another opportunity of a corridor. The Army Corps has identified many brownfield sites along that creek and the drainage corridor. So we could easily expand that to the communities that are going east and west out, away from the Detroit River, as well as, just other centers of opportunities on brownfields. So this is, we're looking at this as a replication of a process that we can use for years to come.
Do other entities factor into this, into your conversations? I know we just had the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority in here talking about the Gordie Howe Bridge. A couple months ago, we had John Hardig in here talking about economic development, and he was very much, he is an environmentalist at heart, but a lot of his talk was focused on bringing together business
Right.
and that economic, as an economic driver, but with the environmentalists so that there would be a share of the riverfront. Do you see that? Is that do you see a lot of
definitely
that going on?
I think one of the things that we discovered when we went after this EDA grant is there are a lot of other groups that are doing similar things, and there's so much money out there, and what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to duplicate what other people were doing. So we got SEMCOG working on climate change and resiliency issues. We got the Detroit Regional Partnership that's looking at large sites that they want to bring redevelopment to. So we're throwing more of the brownfield picture into their arena a little bit more. There's so many groups that we didn't even understand and we didn't have those close relationships with when we went after this grant that now we do. And so we're not stepping on each other's toes. We're all working together. We're supporting them. They're supporting us, because collectively it's going to bring more funding dollars into the area. And so that's been a real revelation as part of this whole process.
Do you work at all with our friends across the border in Canada? At all? Probably not on this project, because this project
not
is
necessarily on this project, but we've sat in on some of the bridge discussions, because we understand the bridge is a big focal point for economic development, and in fact I'm writing a grant application to EPA right now that reminds them that we've got a bridge coming in, there's going to be a lot of commerce going on, and Downriver is going to be kind of a gateway to the bridge, and so you weave those stories into these funding opportunities, and people sit up and understand that there's more to it than just what might meet the eye.
Have you guys written out a timeline? Where do you expect to be? Obviously, you want to be somewhere very specific in 3 years, okay? But when you look out 5 years, 10 years, what do you see? I know that's a difficult question, but
yeah, I think it's part of our strategic planning process. I mean, we have 5 key priorities that the community's told us this is what's important to them. It includes quality of place, small business and large businesses, marketing even. So we know what the priorities are, and the communities are shaping that as we go along. So the way that we are actually providing traction on our plan is through the creation of subcommittees and subgroups from our large strategy plan. We have a small business plan that is dedicated just to the creation of a strategy around helping and support small businesses. We also have a housing priority group that we're convening this week actually to see how are we going to take this statewide and countywide housing plans and apply them to Downriver. What do we want to see as far as development and housing rehabilitation goes. And then we also have 2 other subcommittees, one focused on parks and one focused on arts and culture. So I mean, from that you can see what the communities are working towards, and quality of place really comes up a lot. So as we said, economic development takes time, but if the important thing is that we're talking to each other, we're thinking regionally along the corridor, and I think other areas and other larger partners are starting to take notice. So I think that's only going to bring further investment into Downriver.
When projects like this take place, and then the departments are developed like yours, okay, oftentimes from a really local level, somebody or somebodies step up, and they start to take the lead or anything. Are you seeing any of that, or is it too early?
Well, I think certain communities take more of a lead. Certain communities have more robust, for instance, a Brownfield program right now. Others are a little more challenged. They don't have the capacity, so we're trying to fill that capacity and get the word out. I think that for success in the Brownfield, I think what you're going to see is if we get more funding sources from groups outside of just the environmental area. So if you get MEDC throwing in money, if you get the Department of Treasury throwing in money, if you get the Detroit Regional Partnership throwing in money, that's going to be, I think, a measure of success for us, because for so long we've just been clustered in this working from EPA grants, okay, and those are very narrow assessments, cleanup, and again, they're kind of, we have to wait for people to come to us. I think with these other opportunities, as we get these grants with Ecorse Creek perhaps, and some of the money that we're looking for from the Army Corps, if that money starts coming in, I think that you'll see the success, because that's looking at the communities more holistically, not just strictly on an environmental standpoint from the brownfields, but we can look at brownfield sites also for climate and resiliency. How can we reduce flooding in the neighborhood next door to a brownfield site? Well, maybe the brownfield site could take some of that water somehow out of the basements of the next door neighbors. So we're looking for solutions holistically like that, and those won't come from necessarily EPA. They might come from SEMCOG, or they might come from the state of Michigan. So a good part of our measure of our success, I think, is that these other groups are going to really buy into what we're doing.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. So are you guys enjoying this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, a good time. Between now and the end of the year, what's number one on your hit list, Jazmine?
I think advancing, like I said, the small working groups. So, we're starting to meet in, we've had a couple meetings so far, but the small business strategy is really ramping up, as is the housing group. So, continuing to move those forward and hopefully apply for a couple more grants as well.
What about you, John?
Yeah, for the brownfield portion, we've got in November work groups meeting from each of the 5 communities with our consultant team to really start to develop what are their priorities? Confirm what their priorities are. Are they valid priorities? Can we do what they're asking? And we're going to start with our initial visioning sessions with the public. So a lot of it between now and the end of the year is kind of the information gathering, where we're bringing all that stuff in, and then from there we'll go to priorities of evaluating plans for different parts of these communities and looking for other funding sources and that sort of thing.
Jazmine, if people want more information on your efforts, where's the best place to go?
Well, you can always email us at economicdevelopment@dccwf.org. So that is our general mailbox, and we monitor that. Our offices are housed at the DCC in Southgate. So we're happy to meet with you one-on-one there by appointment. Typically is just for security reasons. That's how we do it. But we're also trying to get better at marketing ourselves and our services here. So we thank you for that opportunity. But those are a couple of the best ways to find us, I think.
Well, fantastic. And we will leave it at that.
Great.
Thanks so much to our DCC guest panelists today for spotlighting the progress being made and the plans being laid for a very bright Downriver future. I'm sure we will catch up again. I'm going to take you up on getting you guys back here again.
Thank you for having us.
And we really appreciate you stopping in on this episode of Destination Downriver.
Thank you again to our sponsors, Martinson Family of Funeral Homes and Allegra Marketing, with a special thanks to our production partners here at the new Taylor Media Center. Thanks for listening and watching. Please visit our website, destinationdownriver.com, or our Facebook page, and be sure to join us for next month's podcast.